What happened is I never posted on LinkedIn while I was a CFO. My second post ever on LinkedIn was I retired from my corporate career. This was in September 2020. My second post ever on LinkedIn was I retired from my corporate career. I appreciate corporate, what they did for me. I traveled the world, I had some great jobs. But now I'm focusing on my real estate and I achieved financial freedom at the time. So I technically didn't have to work anymore, but I wanted to focus on my real estate, but at least I was kind of the owner of my own time. So I made a post about that. And a lot of, at the time I had maybe 1,000 followers. And a lot of people could relate to my post. I think that's very important. As you want to build a brand, as you want to build a network whatsoever, people have to be able to relate to what you say. Okay, they have to, and you don't have to necessarily, you all have to think what your audience. You don't necessarily have to be like, I don't know, you want to have millions of people. In my case, and I didn't plan it, but the way it turned out was the audience was people of working a corporate job, tired of their corporate job, wanting to do what I do.
Yeah, love that. All right, so that's your communication skill or your communication value add is LinkedIn. That's mainly how you get out your message. Okay, let's talk about understanding. So tell me one thing you wish you understood early in your life, career, that you understand completely now. Obviously, we already talked about debt and inflation.
Yeah. I mean, the main thing is being a business owner, being an investor and being a business owner.
So you would have moved away from the W-2 job or route and got into entrepreneurship earlier.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and then one thing you attribute your success to, looking back.
It's actually another lesson learned is one of the worst moments in my career, or actually the worst moment in my career. 2016, I was let go as a former CFO job in Houston, Texas. Company was struggling, had financial issues. Ultimately, they went bankrupt. So at one point, they decided they don't need a CFO anymore. A few months later, they went bankrupt. And I was unemployed for 4 months. And up to that point, I was a corporate worker. I worked 60, 70, 80 hours. I put my blood, sweat, tears.
Do you find that conditioning or that mindset transfers well into entrepreneurship, especially at the beginning when it's a very, very heavy lift? It sounds like to me that you were already investing in real estate while you were still employed in the corporate world.
I had one rental property.
One rental property. So, but do you find that work ethic that was instilled in you, maybe some of your upbringing, coming from, humble beginnings, coming as an immigrant to this country and seeing the opportunity and then putting in the work to get, you have an MBA, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so getting your MBA and then, struggling to move up the corporate ladder, etc., but putting in the hours. Do you feel like that's transferred well for you, Marco? Being an entrepreneur, having to pat yourself on the back when no one's looking?
Oh yeah, I mean, being an entrepreneur is just brutal.
Brutal.
I mean, you get kicked in the gut more than
100%.
once. You gotta be ready. You gotta be ready. You gotta be ready to take the punches.
And there's gonna be a lot of punches, more punches, and for longer, generally, than you're ready for. But you gotta keep on fighting, guys. Once you make it around the corner, there's no go. Is there any going back for you, Marco?
No. Not even remotely.
So success, one thing you attribute it to is just grit, hard work. Get after it.
And here's what happened is for 4 months I was unemployed. I was like, I hated the feeling. I had savings, I was CFO, I was not starving or anything. But I knew at one point this cash would be depleted.
Yeah.
So it was this squeezy feeling in your stomach. Okay, I gotta do something.
I have no income. I have this nest egg, but every day,
I have a mortgage
every day,
I have a condo to pay.
Less.
There's expenses. You have to eat, you have to drink.
Outflows.
And so for me, it was like, what can I do? How can I generate cash flow? So for me, it was real estate. I had one rental property. I didn't understand the concept. That was the problem. My first rental property in 2009. Did not understand the concept I just talked about. Some other concepts and how to scale up. It was just nice to have the property. Somebody paid my mortgage. But then in 16, I went all in. So for 4 months, I eat, drink, breathe.
Bigger Pockets podcast.
Bigger Pockets was part of it.
Yeah.
Yes. Conferences, getting a coach, getting networking whatsoever, and started buying single family rentals. And the goal was to generate $5,000 in cash flow a month. So whenever, I never thought about this real estate going to be my full-time gig, but the idea was I go back to work, if I ever get let go again, I have $4,000 or $5,000 coming in every month that covers my mortgage, that covers my basic expenses. I'm gonna be okay.
You could survive until you find another job.
Yeah, I don't have to sweat.
You're not desolate.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the biggest loss you took in your career. You know, what it felt like then when you were walking through it. You already talked about, you know, being let go, etc. That may be it, that may be not. It could be in your personal life as well. And then, you know, what it felt like then, what you learned from it, and how it feels to you looking back on it now.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is probably the biggest blow I took in life, ever was that part. Because it was like, this is one thing I realized.
It's embarrassing to get fired or let go.
It's fired, but also you realize you put all your time, you put all your biggest value is your time.
Right.
So the biggest good you have is your asset is time.
Yep.
And you put this on, and by the end of the day, you're just a number.
When they didn't need you anymore, they let you go.
Oh.
You're gone.
I mean, I don't know if I can say it on this podcast, but those hoes ain't loyal.
All right, so thanks for sharing that. Looking back on it now, you realize that, hey, look, I was expendable. I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm expendable again. How do I essentially do that? How do I solve for that? And you started spending your time there and also buying back your time.
Correct.
Copy.
Initially, it was investing more time. Because now I'm still working a 40-hour. I went back to work. I still work a 50-hour, 60-hour. I didn't quit, but the motivation changed. The motivation initially, throughout my career was, I want to climb the corporate ladder. I want more salary, more this, bigger bonus. This.
I'm bought into this. I'm gonna be the top guy making, you know, 400 or 500K, whatever it is, with options, stock options.
Yeah.
You know, serve this, serve that.
But then all went up and so I was still working hard, but my motivation now was I want to make as much money as possible and put it back into real estate.
Oh, it's the best.
Any bonus I got, real estate.
Once
Any
you
raise
turn
I
the
got,
corner, you guys, it becomes addicting like nothing else you've ever experienced in your life.
It is so true.
All right, so let's move into sort of what you're doing now. You flipped quite a few houses. You said you got into some coaching. You really dove into the Bigger Pockets podcast. You learned about the BRRRR method. Tell me how you got going on buying rentals, how you got to where you are now with being able to get your crews in there, buy right, slam these deals, force appreciation, get renters in, cash flow these properties, get your debt out. You know, I'm obviously unpacking a lot here, but, you know, what are you comfortable sharing? You're a super open guy, but, you know, kind of some highs and lows and how you got into where you are now.
Yeah, I mean, what I learned is how to scale up. You know, one way, and this is the beauty about real estate. You know, there's so many ways. You know, I'm not saying this, what I did was the holy grail. Okay, this is just something that worked for me while I was still working. There's syndication, multifamily, there's ADU, there's storage, there's so many different things in real estate. It's just, that was the path for me and that worked for me. And it was buying houses and like nicer homes in nicer neighborhoods, but kind of run down, kind of distressed, fix them up, get them at a big discount, fix them up, get them rented, and then basically do a cash out refinance on this property.
All right, so your method is essentially the BRRRR method. Buy distressed or under the current market value of a property, sweat equity, right? Sourcing crews or construction guys to go in and rehab those properties essentially. Then put in a renter that pays your mortgage. Get as much of your cash out as possible.
But it's also important, just wanting more caveat to that, get a renter, but the property still cash flows.
Yeah, that's the triple play we call that. The only way to do that in San Diego, guys, is through ADUs.
And here, and
shameless plug.
I don't know who listens to this and where people are located. What I do is great in the Southeast. What I could not do in California.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that. So Marco is not a California guy. He does not really subscribe to investing in California. I'm working on him. It's gonna take time. But he's really in the South. So he's in places like Alabama, places like
Georgia,
Florida, Mississippi. What are the costs of those properties? Maybe like anywhere from 80 to 200,000 or 250.
The ones I like is in the 180 to 220. That's kind of my sweet spot.
Okay, and you own how many of those now, Marco?
I'm down to 35. At one point I had over 50 single family, but I sold them. I had some in a joint venture with a business partner. So as of right now, I have 35 single family, and I have 5 duplex and 1 triplex.
Okay, so let's talk about debt. How did you learn, and what are you using for debt at the beginning, and what are you using for debt now?
Initially, I still got Fannie Mae mortgage. So I was working, I had an income, a good income, so I could just get regular.
You were just going to the bank and saying, this is going to be my second house for the 14th time.
No, I disclosed. It was investment. It was investment property, so you got an investment loan on it, but it was still Fannie Mae.
But you have a higher down payment on that.
Yeah,
25 as opposed to 10 as a second, or whatever, 3.5 if you have FHA first.
But I mean, I disclosed I didn't live in it. I never planned to live in it. So, but I still was able to get Fannie Mae. It's kind of discounted interest rate, but the max you can have is 10, and it still has to be covered. So it's actually pretty hard to get to 10. I was actually able to get to 9, and then they said you cannot get any more.
No more debt, unless your income goes up from work.
Yeah.
All right, so you started out getting traditional debt. Hey, good credit score, good income. You're obviously, you don't get to get 75% of your cash flow from your properties as well, goes back in. Were you holding each one as a separate LLC, or are you buying them under your personal name?
When I did the Fannie Mae, you have to do it by.
Yeah, you have to do it under your personal name, but you could claim those to an LLC?
Not initially. I mean, here's the other caveat I should say. Sometimes I couldn't get a Fannie Mae. Sometimes I was so distressed, so I got a fix and flip loan. So it was, if the house was somehow livable.
And you could not qualify for Fannie Freddie debt, you would get a fix and flip loan.
Correct.
All right, so there's debt out there, guys. Club hard money loans, private money loans, fix and flip bridge debt. That's what Marco was using. I currently use it. It's a great solve. If you want to find out more about that, reach out to Marco, reach out to myself. All his social media guys will be in the description. Make sure you like and subscribe to the podcast. It really helps us out, getting amazing guests like Marco who have value, that he's obviously educated, he's traveled, most of all his experience in the space, and willing to share it. Okay, so then, equity. Did you start raising capital? You had partners, you're doing JVs. How did you come about that? By going to networking events, by actually being in the space? And then how did those relationships work out?
My philosophy is a little bit different, so I never really got into the money raising part. I was always able to get that on my own.
Sure.
One was with the income, and later on I had a portfolio of 20, 30 houses. If you have a portfolio of 20, 30 houses, you have no problem getting money.
Yeah.
Just if the bank sees or the lender sees what you're doing, you understand what you're doing, there's absolutely no problem.
Now, were you getting a portfolio loan at any point, or did you?
Yes.
Honestly, you did get a portfolio loan.
I did portfolio loans occasionally for refinancing. So actually, I have one out of 8 houses in one portfolio loan.
But you would compartmentalize those. It was not your entire portfolio.
No, I would never put my entire. Because the problem with portfolio loans is,
if the house comes down, it's all going down.
Yes, and then if you want to sell one house, you don't necessarily get the money out. It goes towards principal.
Got it. Oh yeah. No, you can't do that. You need that cash, baby. But
yeah, no. So I did one big portfolio loan. I didn't never did one again. So and I still want to keep like 2 or 3, but ultimately I prefer to do one, and also I prefer to be on my own. The only time I did joint ventures was when I got into multifamily.
Okay, and dude, you never were like, hey, I want to do more faster. You just always were like, hey, I'm gonna keep building these logs, systematically take down these deals, add to my cash flow stack year over year, and in 5, 10, 12 years, I'm gonna have 20 grand or whatever it is, and I'm good.
Yeah. Initially, my goal was the $3,000 to $4,000 or $5,000. Then my goal changed to replace my income as CFO.
Mm-hmm.
And when I replaced my income as CFO in 2020, this is when I quit the corporate.
Done.
But I never.
And when you became a LinkedIn legend.
Yeah, that's the old story. But I never. For me, everybody's driven differently. I was never driven on by the number of houses, asset under management, all these numbers.
Do you find a lot of that stuff is fluff, Marco? Because I do. I mean, so much of it is like, I have 7,000 units, and it's like,
$100 million of assets under management, which sounds impressive.
No, it sounds like you have to manage a bunch of assets that aren't yours.
Yeah, but here's the thing: it sounds like 100 million, and for somebody who's not educated in the space, it sounds impressive. But then you ask that person of that $100 million, how much equity do you own of that $100 million? Usually it's like 1 or 2%.
Or less.
Yeah.
How many point owns do you get?
Yeah, you're like, okay, I mean, it sounds impressive, it looks good, but I think the problem with all this, there's a lot of fluff in it.
And acquisition fees, man.
Yeah, and it's just, if you follow any of these people in the city, and I don't want to shade, there's value syndicator, I don't want to put shade on them, but there's a lot of fluff.
Yeah, just like kind of the hood, guys. I'm the same as Mark. Obviously, we're making jokes. We're in the space. We understand that kind of humor, but there is value in syndication. There is value in raising capital. There is value in taking down large assets. But just, don't be enamored with big number because it's a big number.